What's up, class? Today is day 4 of no school. Dab on them. I need to keep myself entertained because I'm getting bored. So, here's what this video is going to be about. You're going to have a test posted sometime next week. But in the meantime, I want to just throw a video up on the classroom that's going to go over the study guide and the review notes that I just posted this morning, just about 5 minutes ago. So we're going to start here with the study guide. I'm just going to go down each one, just tell you which ones, a little bit about each one. Again, because you're going to have access to your binder, to all the notes, to Google, to everything. You should do well on the test. The test will be given online. It'll be in a Google form. It'll be sent out again next week. I'm probably going to make it tomorrow. That's what I'm going to do tomorrow. And then I'll probably post it on Monday, and I'll give you to the end of the week to do it. So what I'd like you to do right now is go ahead and open up your study guide. We'll start there first. Give you a second to get there. And if you need to pause the video, just pause it. And let's just go ahead bit by bit here. We're going to start from the top down, okay? So, the first one, know about the Japanese invasion of China. Here's what I want you to know about that. Remember, it was the Japanese were looking to expand their empire. They're an island country. They need a lot of resources. The Japanese looked over to China as a place that was actually going through a civil war at the time, and they knew that China at that time probably wasn't going to be strong enough to stand up against the Japanese army. They looked for an opportunity. They created one known as the Manchuria Incident. You don't really need to know that, but what I really want you to know about the Japanese invasion is know about that it was brutal. It was a sweeping invasion that Japanese really showed no mercy to the Chinese. This kind of bleeds into the second point there, which is the rape of Nanking. Again, this event, tens of thousands of people were killed, murdered, raped. These were citizens by Japanese soldiers. Oftentimes overlooked in World War II is the brutality that the Japanese soldiers committed as well. Sometimes we just focus, it's the Nazis and the German people and they're the bad people. But also, in war, and on all sides really, but also the Japanese committed a lot of human atrocities as well. Let's go to the third one. Know about how life was like in Europe during post-World War I. That's what that should have said. No, it was bad. Soldiers came home from the war, missing limbs. Cities were destroyed. Factories, farms were destroyed. There weren't a lot of jobs available. Families were, split up. It was just tough times. The global economic depression that would occur in 1929 further exacerbated these problems. So life in Europe post-World War I was not very good, especially if you were a German, right? So, Germany gets screwed over in the Treaty of Versailles. Their military gets decreased. They have to pay economic sanctions. They lose territory. And so if you're a German, it's really humiliating, okay? That'll be important in a bit. What is fascism? All I want you to know about fascism is know that it's super nationalism, that you're putting your country before yourself. That's what I really want you to know about fascism. Why did fascism come into popularity in World War I? Because a lot of these countries, Germany and Italy, they had been weakened after World War I, especially Germany, and fascism was a way for people that were desperate and looking for change. They saw it as an opportunity. Hey, we have these fascist leaders that want to come into power, and they want to make our government more powerful, because that's a big part of fascism, is having a very strong, central, powerful government. And at this time, a lot of European countries had weak central governments, or at least perceived weak governments and weak leaders. So fascism came into popularity because people were pretty desperate, and they wanted new leadership, and they wanted stronger governments. Know about Mussolini? Just know he's the guy who starts fascism and leads it in Italy. Go back and look at the slides, but that's really what I want you to know about Mussolini. Know about Hitler and how he rose to power? Again, Hitler has a lot of things going for him. Number one, Germany gets screwed over by the Treaty of Versailles, like I already mentioned in this video. Therefore, people are desperate, looking for new leaders. Hitler was a veteran of the war. He's a very good orator. He's a very good speaker. He commands a presence when he speaks, and so he was very attractive to people, and people who were desperate and looking for new ideals and new ways. Even though Hitler was kind of saying some kind of out of pocket crazy things, Hitler was down, or people, excuse me, were down for Hitler because he was talking about rebuilding Germany, and at the end of the day, that's when people are desperately poor. That's what they want to hear. So that's how he kind of rose to power. You can also go back and think about the video of the rise of the Third Reich that we watched. I mean, you could really go into the nitty gritty and talk about the burning of the Reichstag and how he blamed the communists for that, and he therefore eliminated his only political rival, and how he wrote Mein Kampf. I mean, you could really get into it, but this is an AP class, so I just want you to know the basics. Know about Aryanism and Nazism, how the two are related. Aryanism is a belief that northern white Christian Europeans are the superior dominant race of the world. Nazism is a political party or a political belief that is rooted in Aryanism. That's how they're related. Okay. Next one, know about who the Nazis despised and hated. I mean, you have it in a slide, but I'll repeat it. It should be in your notes. So, Jews, Polish people, Soviets, anyone of really Slavic descent, any person of color, anyone who is part of the LGBTQ plus universe, mentally or physically disabled, gypsies. Yeah, I mean, that should be enough. You should know, just go back to this video and write it down on the test. Know about appeasement and the Munich Plan. Appeasement is how the world, especially in Europe, how the countries and leaders dealt with and treated Hitler. They didn't want to go to war right away with Hitler because they thought they could appease him or kiss up to him, right? Kiss butt. And be like, oh, Hitler, we'll give you this, we'll give you that, and it'll all be okay. That led to the Munich Plan, where Europe decided we'll allow Germany to take parts of Czechoslovakia, but they can't invade anymore. Okay, Hitler, you can't do that. Well, a couple problems with this. Number one, it's going completely against the Treaty of Versailles, the appeasement, because they allowed Hitler to rearm the military, expand their territory. Right there, you have problems. And then, obviously, the bigger problem is Hitler's not going to listen, as we know. He eventually takes over all of Czechoslovakia. So appeasement is often seen as a failure because it allowed Hitler to really enough time to develop his military, develop his kind of powerful rebuild of Germany, and they probably could have squashed Germany and Hitler earlier, but they were too afraid to go into war. So appeasement is often seen as a failure. Know the four main Allied powers and the three Axis powers. That should be in your notes. So the ones I want you to know are the United States, the United Kingdom, or England, Britain, whatever you want to call that. China, who's fighting over in Asia, and then the Soviet Union. Okay. Remember, Soviet Union, not Russia on the test. Okay, because they are the Soviet Union during this time period. And the three Axis powers. Excuse me: Germany, Japan, Italy. Okay. Know about the Nazi-Soviet Pact. This was a deal that Hitler and Stalin brokered, pretty much said, hey, Hitler wanted to invade to the east. In between Germany and the Soviet Union, right in the middle, is Poland. Hitler wanted to invade Poland, but not spook the Soviet Union. So Hitler and Stalin, kind of wish I had my puppets here and I could do a puppet show. Hitler and Stalin made a deal that said, the Nazi-Soviet Pact, that says, hey, let's agree not to attack each other. And that's what kind of allowed Hitler to invade Poland without spooking the Soviets too much. But of course, Hitler's going to, stab Stalin in the back. So hashtag fake. More fake than Mr. Tomei. Know about the miracle at Dunkirk. Just know that the British, when they tried to go over and fight the Germans on continental Europe, they took that L, and eventually they got pushed back to a port city, a coastal city known as Dunkirk, which is kind of on the border of Belgium and France. They were completely surrounded by the Germans. The Germans were trying to pick them off from the air and bombing them. Kind of a strategic mistake, most historians think, because the Germans could have just pushed in their tank forces and probably wiped out the 300,000+ British soldiers. But the part where it's a miracle is the British called upon civilian vessels and ships to go over. And in the movie, if you watch the movie, you'll see how like small some of these ships are. They're like little yachts and Danes. And these civilian ships went over and saved a lot of soldiers. And it's a miracle. Unfortunately, those 300,000 soldiers were somehow able to get back across the English Channel and back to England. It's a huge deal because if the British had lost those soldiers, they would have lost pretty much the majority of their military forces, and they would have had a very hard time against a probable invasion by the Soviet or by Nazi Germany. So that's why it's a miracle at Dunkirk, because it seemed that all hope was lost, and then all of a sudden it became a miracle, and the hundreds of thousands of lives were probably spared. Know what the Blitz is? You can actually take that one out. I'm not going to ask you that because I did not go over that with you in class, nor did I really go over it when I posted the notes. So you can scratch that off. So know what the Blitz is, scratch it off. Next one, know why the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Two main reasons, okay? Remember, I think this one you guys know because this is one of the last things we covered in class. Number one, the Americans decided to move their... number one, the Americans stopped sending oil to the Japanese, and this made the Japanese angry because obviously to wage war, you need oil and gas for your machines, your boats, your tanks, etc., etc. Number two, the United States then moved their naval Pacific fleet from San Diego to Hawaii. By doing that, that is moving closer to Japan, makes the Japanese a little nervous. What are the United States doing? They're stopped sending us oil. They're now moved their fleet to Hawaii. I don't know. And then as a result, that's why the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, because they thought, hey, if we kind of wipe out the Americans now, we can do whatever we want in the Pacific. No one will stop us. And as a result, Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Very successful, not completely successful, however, but it awakens the United States, and we're able to, get into the war and eventually win the war. Know about island hopping. It's the strategy that was implemented in the Pacific. Remember, the Pacific is a gigantic area of space that is in a lot of ways like a desert, right? Because if you can't find land, you can't restock, resupply. So little islands are of great importance in this war because they allow you opportunities to set up a command post, set up a sick bay, set up a place to restock and resupply, have airfields, right? And the goal is if you get closer and closer to your enemy, it becomes easier to attack your enemy, right? There'd be no way, especially back then, that the United States would have been able to launch attacks on mainland Japan or even have an invasion all the way from Hawaii. They needed to get closer, and eventually they would. And that was the strategy the Allies used, island hopping. Where it says know at least two types of fortifications found along the Atlantic Wall. Because you were not in class, scratch that out. So where it says know at least two types of fortifications found along the Atlantic Wall, scratch that out. You just need to know that DDay was the turning point in the war in Europe. Yeah, just know about that. Changed the war, right? Our ability to land on the coast of France and gave us a foothold in Europe and allowed us to really turn the tide in war. The conditions of the Battle of the Bulge, I'll list a bunch for you. Okay, you're probably going to need to know two for the test. It was cold. It was snowy. It was wet. Lack of resources. Lack of supplies. Most people were killed because of exposure. Boom. Next one. Yalta Conference. The Yalta Conference is how that was the first conference with FDR, Stalin, and Churchill. And at this conference, it's so you have the United States, Soviet Union, and the United Kingdom, and they know they're going to win the war at this point. This is after D-Day, and this is kind of as we're getting closer to everyone surrounding Germany. They decide, okay, how are we going to split up Germany? What's the fairest? What's the best way? And so that's what the Yalta Conference is. Most importantly, it's how Germany is going to be split up. And that's important because you'll understand why it becomes more important when we start talking about the Cold War. But we'll get back to that. So that's what I want you to know about the Yalta Conference. It's how Germany is going to get split up. Who won the race to Berlin? The race to Berlin was won by the Soviet Union. In the video and the slides right after the capture of Berlin, it shows you the Soviet Union planting their flag. Also very important, will make more sense when we talk about the Cold War in our next unit. Know about what happened to Hitler and Mussolini? They died. They got killed. Well, Hitler committed suicide and Mussolini was killed. But just know that they died, right? So in a very short period of time, they went from nobodies to superstars to being killed or committing suicide. So sucks for them. Next one. Know what a kamikaze is. Remember, kamikaze is it was a translation means divine wind. It would have been a Japanese pilot, a suicide pilot. The Japanese, towards the end of the war, became desperate and started utilizing more and more of kamikaze attacks. That is pretty simply where a Japanese pilot, gets in a plane, and they use their plane and they guide their plane. It's like a guided missile, and they try to land into, mainly ships is where they would attack, but sometimes if they're on land, they would try and attack at bases or etc. and so forth. So that's what a kamikaze is. Know about the Potsdam Conference. This was now more focused on refining how we were going to read or how the world was going to be split up, but also how it gave the ultimatum to Japan, because Japan was the last kind of Axis member still fighting, and it said, hey, surrender, face utter destruction. As we know, Japan doesn't surrender, but we'll get back to that at the very last slide, the last bullet point here. The next few ones are going to be about the Holocaust. So know about the Nuremberg laws. That was the really first law, or the first kind of move that was discriminatory against the Jewish people. That's where it forbid Germans and Jews from marrying and such, or having sexual intercourse. Right. The idea is to keep the German bloodline pure. Know about what happened on Kristallnacht. Kristallnacht is the night of broken glass. It's where Jewish places of worship, which are known as synagogues, and Jewish businesses were destroyed, burnt down, broken into, and that was even a more of an escalation of violence against and discrimination against Jewish people in Germany. Know about the Jewish ghettos. This is the place where eventually Jewish people were forced to go. They were walled off areas of cities. Jewish people were packed in there like sardines, limited resources, limited supplies. This is where a lot of the first mass casualties started happening in terms of death. If you watch The Pianist, that movie is all about the Warsaw Ghetto, probably the most famous of the Jewish ghettos. Know what the final solution was. It was the Nazis' plan to kill and wipe out all Jews in Europe. So this would be done usually through the gas chambers in the death camps. And as a result, about 6 million Jews were killed in the whole final solution. If you watch the videos that I have in class of the U.S. soldiers coming upon the camps, they'll give you an idea of what the camps were like. Or if you watch Schindler's List, you'll have somewhat of an idea as well. And then the last one is be able to make a stand on whether or not the United States was justified in dropping the atomic bombs on Japan. So normally in class, I give you a packet, and then we have like, you read both sides and multiple arguments, and then you're like, okay, what do I think about it? Because obviously of the circumstances, we weren't able to do that. What I'm going to tell you now is I'm going to give you both sides, and then I want you on the test to be able to make a decision and make your own opinion. There's no right or wrong answer, but if you just go back and watch this video, you'll be able to recreate an answer. So here's the argument for not dropping the atomic bombs. So an argument you could make would be, at this point in the war, there was no need to drop the atomic bombs. The Allies should have sought out diplomatic solutions instead of dropping an atomic weapon on civilians. Civilians did nothing, there's no reason to ever attack innocent women, men, and children. It shows that, we were willing to commit war crimes. Technically, because of the Geneva protocols, we should have never used chemical weapons anyways in the first place. Because we use atomic weapons, we open the floodgates for other countries to use and have atomic weapons. And in our human history, we've been close to destroying each other with nuclear weapons. We easily could have just waited out the Japanese, or we could have sent a blockade around their island, or we should have just sought another solution than dropping the atomic bombs. So that's that argument. This is the argument for dropping the atomic bombs. Japan was never going to be willing to surrender. Japan has proven that they were going to be willing to fight to the last man. Soldiers were willing to kill themselves through kamikaze or other types of suicide attacks for their empire of Japan. A blockade and waiting them out would have never worked, because Japan would have fought to the very bitter end, and that, who knows how long that could have been. Some people say maybe we should have just invaded Japan. That would have caused more lives. Most historians and even statistical mathematicians agree that while the atomic bomb killed anywhere from 200,000 to 300,000, the potential invasion of Japan would kill anywhere from 10 to 40 million American, Japanese, civilian, and soldiers combined. So if we're just looking at numbers, although the atomic bomb was tragic and decimating and cruel, I would be making the argument that it's still couple 100,000 people is better than nearly 40 million people. And so that's why I believe that the atomic bombs were justified. Okay. Boom. So that's everything here on the study guide. Tomorrow, I'm probably going to make the test. I don't think I'll post it tomorrow because I don't want to overload you. And so you probably won't hear from me tomorrow. And then I won't post anything on weekends because that's, you guys should have weekends. But on Monday, be prepared to see the test. I will probably give you from Monday to Friday at midnight to complete the test. It'll be, for the most part, probably multiple choice because that's just the easiest way for me to give you an online digital test. And then from there, I also have posted the review slides. You can use that as well. But I would say stick to this video because if you can just copy down what I put in the video, you'll probably be okay for the test. But besides that, again, if you have any questions, just reach out to me via Classroom or my email. And hopefully you guys are not getting too bored. I went to my parents' house the other day and I stole their PlayStation 2. So I'm playing games that are like 15, 20 years old. It's pretty lit. Got to find ways to stay happy during this, self-quarantine or, the shutdown or whatever. All right, y'all. Hope you're hanging in there. And look for the test on Monday and just study this stuff in the video over the weekend. I will post on Monday. Deuces.